these devices could give adversaries a way to disable power grids, damage energy infrastructure, and trigger blackouts. We've gone all wind and solar. Maybe you have solar on your rooftop. You think you're doing the right thing. You have time of use charges. But you're electrified your home, and then you've got a device on your inverter that could just pull the plug on the power you do have. It's a perfect storm.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of PowerGab, your go-to show for all things energy and environmental policy in the state of Colorado. I'm Jake Fogleman, joined as always by my co-host, Amy Cooke. And this week, we want to kick things off with a little bit of a public service announcement, a little bit of an explainer. This is specifically for Xcel Energy customers. A new article out in Colorado Public Radio talking about the Public Utilities Commission approving Xcel's new time of use rates, the new structure. So time of use rates have been around for a couple of years now in Colorado, but Xcel is both changing the rate that is charged under them and changing the hours that those time of use rates will be charged to better align generation and demand for when renewables can be there on the grid.
Yeah, this is interesting, Jake, because it also flips the narrative, flips the paradigm on individual energy use. So in other words, you can't use energy when you need it or when it's convenient for you. You can use energy when it's convenient for the resource, and for meaning wind and solar. So to align better with when wind and solar are available, let's go to winter first, because this one I actually see job opportunity here. Winter, they're changing the hours, so it's going to go 5 to 9, which is obviously after the sun goes down in the winter, and wind may or may not be there. So they're going to charge you more, and that increase in the winter is almost 40% for time. So between 5 to 9, if you want to use more power, remember you've now been forced into this detrimental electrification. So you have a home heating pump, you have an electric hot water heater, and by the way, you're home and you need to plug in your electric vehicle. They are raising your electric rates by 40% because it coincides with demand, because you get home from work and you want to actually use, you're going to turn on a light, you're going to heat your house in the winter, you're going to do all these things, you're going to get dinner ready, you're going to throw a load of laundry in the water, you're home from work, you're doing all these things. But it also coincides not with just demand, but it also coincides with when the resource is available. Oh, it's not there? Well, too bad. We're gonna raise your rate by 40% if you want to use more power from 5 to 9 in the winter. So when it is dark and when it is cold, you will not have access. Well, you'll have access. You'll just have to pay 40% more for the privilege of having a light on in your house during the winter from 5 to 9. And we were laughing about this during, before the show started. It's not funny, but one of the things, there could be a new job of somebody coming in during the day and turning on, making sure your house is warm so that when you get home to a warm house, and maybe it can just gradually cool down until the time of use rate drops after 9 o'clock. I mean, it's just nuts. It's nuts. This has nothing to do with human thriving and everything to do with egos that want to prove that they can power a grid with wind and solar. So that's the winter charge. Summer charge isn't going up as much, only 17%, But here's the point. It's not about humans. It's not about you being comfortable or about you thriving or about you, maybe you have a home business. You can't shut down from 5 to 9. I don't know. And nor is it even any of my business. But what you have are your overlords at the state that are saying, oh, from 5 to 9, right when people need power. No, we're not. We want to make sure it's not, it's, you're not going to have it as readily available because we are going to make it so cost prohibitive for you to use. I think it's cruel. I think it's absolutely cruel.
I think this one in particular, time of use rates have been a little controversial so far since Xcel started rolling them out a couple of years ago. But I think this one in particular is going to really get people the wrong way because at least the previous window, I think it was 3 to 7 was their previous on-peak window. And that's still annoying, but at least you can gut it out till 7 p.m. and then, okay, I'll make dinner a little bit later. I'll do my load of laundry a little bit later. But extending it from 5 to 9, well into the evening, I don't think most people are going to be down for waiting to make dinner and do laundry and tell your kids not to turn on the TV until, oh, it's already their bedtime. Sorry. I just have a feeling that this one is going to go over like a lead balloon. But what it
And by the
is, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, by the way, the other thing is they're taking your gas stove from you too.
Right.
So you have everything's electric and then they're jacking up the price.
And that was my point, is that this is, to me, is a symptom of what they realize is coming. We've shown in our modeling is when you push people to this on the policy front to all electric everything, you introduce a point of vulnerability and fragility in the grid. And as we've modeled, doing so makes us a winter peaking system. We're not currently a winter peaking system. So the risks gets pretty substantial during that peak demand period when everyone is using the same electric grid. And oh, by the way, the generating resources that tend to work the best in the winter are no longer available to you or soon won't be available to you. I'm thinking coal and combined cycle baseload gas. This is what you have to do. You have to try to disincentivize people from actually using the product in order to keep the grid afloat. Becomes a bit of a Rube Goldberg machine to keep the thing going as you're disassembling it in real time. So one important caveat we should mention is that, at least as of now, there's still the opportunity for folks to opt out. This is still I think you're automatically enrolled if you have a smart meter, but you can call Xcel up and say, hey, I don't want to be a part of this. Put me on a flat rate. And the flat rate falls between the off-peak and the on-peak rate. I think it's about 16 cents a kilowatt hour, and you'll just be charged that for every single hour of the day. So if that appeals to you, you still have that option for now.
But I'll tell you what, I bet that goes away too, as they realize the fragility of the grid. When it's only wind and solar, you're in a period of potential blackouts because it's during the winter. As you said, it's a winter peaking system. It's bitter cold outside. It's cloudy or overcast. There is no solar. You've exhausted your batteries, and the wind just isn't blowing, but it's still bitter cold. There will be blackouts. There's just no way to avoid it. And this is cruelty. This, you know what this reminds me of? This is Jimmy Carter's put on a sweater in policy.
Yeah.
This is put on a sweater codified into state law.
Yeah.
It's cruel. It's actually, I think it's I think it's malfeasance.
Yeah. And the thing on that I want to touch on, because this is what tends to bother me with these time of use rates thing, is I'm a good free marketeer. I think dynamic pricing can be good if it's reflecting true market signals. Prices are a signal, as Hayek taught us. I sometimes debate with my free market friends that are maybe more in favor of time of use charges because they think it is a price signal. But to your point, it's not an organic thing where, hey, our gas supply is interrupted because of something happening in the market, so we have to temporarily expose you to higher gas prices and then it'll come down. This is being engineered by central planners to give you artificial price signals based on trying to incentivize behavior that the state thinks is the best way to go forward. So it's trying to appeal to free marketeers for the purposes of central planning towards their preferred energy ends. And that to me is what tends to irritate me about this whole scheme.
And I will say this, you're absolutely right. It is social engineering of behavior. It would be one thing if they said, go. let me back up and say that differently. Social engineering of behavior, because these are people who don't want you using power. It's because they don't value your individual free choice. They view energy as a way to control emissions and control your behavior as it relates to or as it contributes to emissions. They have a myopic view. It is a singular way to look at energy. It is emissions only, as opposed to, is someone doing something beneficial for their family? Are they contributing to the economy? Or maybe they're inventing something that will reduce emissions in another way, but they don't have access to, you won't have access to power because it will be too cost prohibitive to do it from 5 to 9
Right.
in Colorado in the winter.
Yeah. And there's just something that doesn't sit right with me about turning using energy when you want to into a luxury. That just isn't the way we've typically done things in a rich industrialized society like the United States, where we have the abundant resources to make power available to anyone whenever they need it, to do whatever they so choose to do with it. Yep, that's just the update on the time of use rates that we wanted to flag for everybody. Apparently, these will be kicking in October, so they haven't kicked in just yet. You're still on your current time of use plans, but do not be surprised when in October those new winter peak rates kick in and suddenly it's 40% more expensive per kilowatt hour when you try to use your electricity when you get home. But outside of the go ahead.
Sorry. Meanwhile, after you have electrified your entire darn house.
That's right. Yeah. So the overall load from your house will increase substantially at the same time that the rate to use that stuff goes up by almost 40%. Fun predicament we're presenting to the ratepayers of Colorado, I would say. But speaking of ratepayers of Colorado and speaking of renewable energy, there was a interesting and kind of unsettling utility dive story that we wanted to flag for folks. I believe this was actually, the news on this was first broken by Reuters, but evidently there is now an epidemic of solar installers and solar installation owners discovering what is, at least in this article, being termed rogue devices placed in Chinese manufactured solar installations. They found it in battery installations as well. I think they found it in some heat pumps too, where these unauthorized these devices that people weren't aware of that appear to be communication devices that third parties that are not, they don't own the installation, they're not part of the utility buying the power, can, I guess, interfere with and potentially destabilize remotely, which is a pretty troubling thing, that we just have an uncertain amount of rogue devices, I guess, attached to our energy infrastructure.
Yeah, this is it says rogue communication devices found on Chinese-made solar power inverters. So and then it goes on, these devices could give adversaries a way to disable power grids, damage energy infrastructure, and trigger blackouts. So now let's set the scene. We've gone all wind and solar. Maybe you have solar on your rooftop. You think you're doing the right thing. You have time of use charges. But you're electrified your home, and then you've got a device on your inverter that could just pull the plug on the power you do have. It's a it's a perfect storm. We talked about this last week. We continue to make the perfect storm stronger. Imagine that we have no coal or natural gas. We have no inertia on our grid, and some of these rogue Chinese devices are on our system, and it triggers a blackout. You can't make this stuff up. If you did, no one would believe it. No one would believe you are collectively that stupid to do that, to put our grid and individual human thriving and individual lives at danger like this. But we have.
Yeah, it's another instance of policy introduced fragility onto the system because China, as we know, is there's no data available for me to know how many Chinese-made solar panels are in Colorado specifically, but we know that China controls more than 80% of the global supply chain of these solar panels. And, we're not exactly on the friendliest terms with Beijing, so they may just have an incentive to introduce vulnerabilities and weaknesses that they can potentially use to their geopolitical advantage. I'm not someone working in the foreign policy establishment, but I think I know enough to know that probably would be of interest to a geopolitical rival. And so this is a troubling thing that I would imagine Congress probably will do something on this. It'd be interesting to see if state policymakers start to take this seriously, because this is a pretty significant vulnerability in critical infrastructure that evidently we're supposed to rely almost solely on to power our future.
So one of the things that the wind and solar lobby also complained about in the House bill that we talked about on our last show that passed, the budget bill that passed in the House in Congress, also is a limitation on foreign components in on some of our renewable energy devices. And if you want to know why, look no further than a story like it was in Reuters originally, but we read it on Utility Dive, and we'll drop it in the show notes. But it is the Chinese and their ability to insert these communication devices, and they found them not just on inverters for solar panels, but they found them in cellular radios. They found them in wind turbine, in inverters for wind turbines. And it's been going on for the past 9 months. And these are devices that have come from multiple Chinese suppliers. So it's not as if it's just one Chinese company that is doing. And if it's coming from multiple suppliers, you can rest assured that this is a directive by the Communist Chinese Party to do that. So when you hear that, made in America, and don't be such a homer. Listen, I don't want rogue Chinese communication devices on my power grid, but from what it sounds like, they're already there. So we'll have to. It's a huge vulnerability, an enormous security risk.
Yeah, absolutely. As we're coming up on time here, there's one other story we wanted to touch on briefly, and this is from our friend Corey Gaines. Did a little bit of investigative reporting about the activities of a pretty well-known energy think tank based right here in our backyard in Colorado. That is, of course, the Rocky Mountain Institute. And Corey did a little bit of digging into how much money that organization has been getting from, well, essentially the taxpayers, because it's from government grants and other research purposes. And he puts the tally at over $700,000 that RMI has received from the state of Colorado using taxpayer funds to advocate for a certain, let's be frank, a ideological position in terms of energy, namely wind, solar, batteries, energy efficiency. Basically, their entire, business model or organization model is pushing towards this stuff. So over $700,000 of taxpayer money is going to fund research that is slanted in one particular direction.
It is what the state of Colorado hires Rocky Mountain Institute to do. RMI, by the way, started by Amory Lovins, who I would call public enemy number one, and not because I don't dislike him. I dislike his policies. I think his policies are dangerous for human thriving. And all the policies that we have talked about on this show, you can rest assured that Amory Lovins and the Rocky Mountain Institute have their fingers on it somewhere, as Corey Gaines proves. One, I just want to give a shout out to Corey Gaines. If you aren't reading the Colorado Accountability Project, and that's where he writes. He's got a Substack there. You should, because he's phenomenal. We're going to have him on the show in a couple of weeks, talk about some of the cool things he's doing. He's a teacher at the community college there. I think he teaches physics. so he can't come on during the week because he actually has a real job that and he's a teacher. So and he's a teacher that during the when we record, he isn't available, but we're gonna get him in just a couple of weeks. Very excited about that. Super smart, just a great guy. But he did a core request on this to see how much Colorado is spending with the Rocky Mountain Institute, essentially an ideological organization that is providing consulting, strategy, advice to the Polish regime on how to get to net zero. These are people who want solar panels and wind turbines. So where do? You go to the Rocky Mountain Institute and you pay them a bunch of money to tell you exactly what you want to hear, because they're happy to do it and take taxpayer dollars to do it. Now, one of the things Rocky Mountain Institute, RMI, was instrumental in the initiation of bans on gas stoves. Some questionable research coming out from RMI about gas stoves and links to child asthma.
Yeah.
Or childhood asthma. So if you want to know where did this crazy notion of you've got to get rid of your gas stove start, well, look at Rocky Mountain Institute in Aspen. Look at Avery Lovin's Institute. They have been the ones that have championed it. They initiated it. They championed it. And then, of course, Jared Polis loves electrification. So where did he go? He went to Rocky Mountain Institute. And I would say they've received money from the state, but they've also gotten money from the federal government and it's been millions of dollars from the feds. I looked at it. I looked at the Doge. There's a Doge dashboard, and I looked them up and found a number of different grants that they got from the federal government under the Biden administration. So Rocky Mountain Institute gets a lot of taxpayer dollars to advocate for things that are not necessarily in the taxpayer's best interest.
Right. And if you ever, I mean, it just goes to show, if you ever wonder why so many Colorado policymakers sound like they get their talking points from environmental groups, well, surprise, surprise, that's exactly, they're paying for it. So they might as well use them. The gas stove example is the perfect one, because that one was a talking point that really just came out of nowhere. And it was all traced back to that one RMI study. And suddenly every national media outlet was writing articles about it, even after I think the Washington Examiner was the one that posted the rebuttal with all the litany of peer-reviewed research that found the opposite conclusion. That never seemed to go quite as far. It was just they all glommed onto that one study, and it's had massive influence. And of course, it's found a friendly audience here amongst Colorado policymakers who have been all too happy to use that to help push for forced electrification, whether or not you personally happen to enjoy your gas stove and like cooking on it and want to keep it around a few years longer. So kudos to Corey Gaines. We'll drop that in the show notes for you folks so you can check out all the, he links to several studies and several grants that they've received that money for. So definitely check that out. But as we're coming up on time here, Amy, I'll give you a chance for the last word or any takeaways for our listeners.
Yeah, watch out for rogue Chinese your communication devices on your wind and you're on your solar panels or your batteries.
Yeah.
For folks who've gotten batteries, I'm gonna go down and check mine. Like, is there a community? I want to make sure that I don't have batteries, because I do have some of those giant batteries. I want to make sure that they don't have a Chinese communication device. First of all, I got to find somebody who knows how to figure out what that's going to look like. So there's that. I will say, and also be wary of anything you read out of the Rocky Mountain Institute. Imagine the panic if the Independence Institute was the prime advisor to the governor on the budget.
Right.
I mean, people in this state would lose their minds, even though we get it's not as if we get a huge benefit out of it. We just believe people should be free to use their own money as they so choose, and that government should be limited. Tabor's a good thing because it can't just take money from taxpayers whenever it feels like it. So it's not like we benefit from it. Whereas from from Rocky Mountain Institute, it's actually made a business out of this whole net zero and this environmental policy. They sell services. It is a business for them, and they sell books and everything else. So if it comes from Rocky Mountain Institute, look at that with the skeptical eye. And then lastly, get a generator, but check to see if it's got Chinese components.
Firm your grid, but inspect it first to make sure that someone else isn't making sure you can't. But that does it for us on another episode here of PowerGab. If you like what you saw, you can head over to powergab.org to check out our entire back catalog. We produce new episodes every single week. We're also available wherever you get your audio shows, whether that's Spotify or Apple. And if you want to reach out to us, suggest future show topics or great guests you want to see us interview on the program, you can send those to info@powergab.org. We always love hearing from you guys. But until next week, we'll see you.